Well, you asked enough times, so here it is. The Smith & Wesson Shield Plus on GBGuns. You'll see a cold shot first impressions, do full magazine +1, find out what ammo it likes in our trademark What's for Dinner test, take it over to the spinner for sights and trigger control, do some practical accuracy, and then give you concluding thoughts. Coming up next on GBGuns. Now, these cold shots aren't exactly my first shots. However, they are with this gun. I shot as a Shield Plus at a media event, spent a day with it, had kind of mixed feelings, just wasn't too inspired, but you guys asked for it repeatedly, so we've got one. Got a C-zone target out there about 20 yards away. Thanks to having two cameras now, you've got the target cam to watch. First 10 rounds, I am using the extended magazine so that I can get my almost whole hand on it, and this is some Sterling 115 grain ammo. Slide release does not want to release. See how it does. Now, little guns like this have become popular, but aren't my favorite. There we go. How am I hitting so far left? Recoil control is not bad. And my accuracy's decent when I slow down and spend some time on it. It's actually not too rough. The hesitation we had towards this was from Tia's own shield that she carries. The trigger on that thing's not always predictable. It seems to kind of slip, not always have a definable break. That's fine in panic mode, which is, what self-defense shooting is about and what these guns are for. It's just not the most confidence building when you're at the range. I felt some of that on this. It'd be interesting to see when we do full mag +1 and I try to burn it down, how well that works for me. And yes, I forgot to turn on the target camera for those first shots. That's how it looked on the steel. And for perspective, that's what I'm shooting at. It's a ABC zone 20-25 yards away or so. Full magazine +1 is something we do to see how a gun runs fully stuffed. Using the same Sterling ammo. There we go, slide release worked that time. That's our one. For our full, we're running the 13 rounder. Now, just like with the Shield Equalizer, I was unable to get 13 rounds in here. At 11, it just said, no more. Some of you said in the Equalizer review that it just takes a bit of extra pressure. I was putting all of the reasonable pressure that I would put on a magazine before being concerned something might be wrong. So who knows? But that gives us 12 rounds, which is better than the single stack version, and this gun is basically the same size. Let's see how it runs. Hopefully I hit the steel, but the main point is to see if I can just burn it down and if this gun will run fully stuffed like that. Moderate hits, that's okay, that's not the goal. The recoil impulse made that pretty controllable, but as you may have noticed, and you can rewind and watch it again, my shot cadence wasn't very predictable. And that's that kind of unpredictable trigger that Tia was talking about. I felt it in here. I wasn't really sure where I was on it, but I got all the rounds out. It's a defensive gun. Is that an issue? That's up to you guys. Now let's see what it eats and what's for dinner. It's that time again. Thanks to our Ammo Squared supporters and patrons, we've got what's for dinner. As I move along these, you'll see we've got a wide variety of projectile shapes and types, different case materials, and different bullet weights. We're looking to see what will the gun eat. Will it feed from slide lock? Will it cycle and chamber another round of the same type? Will it lock open on empty? A third round there just to reduce variables. This is just a concept to see if the gun will run with it. If you want to try any of this stuff, check out the pinned comment for the article. We try to show you guys where we found this stuff and where you can pick some up on your own. Try to get this done before it rains on us. What's for dinner starts off at our lightest load, which is a 50 grain plus P. This is Liberty Defense, Liberty Ammunition Civil Defense. Nice nickel plated stuff. Screaming out of these little guns. Whew, it's loud. Can feel that percussion in my eyes, but no issues cycling. Next load is the ARX Inceptor 65 grain. This is stated velocity of 1650, which is pretty quick. Not as fast as that Liberty though. Circle 2. It ran and did not group very well though. Our third load is the Hornady Critical Defense Light. This is the little 100 grainer that has a bullet profile very similar to a 380. Very pointy. I've seen it choke some guns. Shield Plus seems to eat it. Now I'm erring left most of the time. That tends to be when you squeeze a gun because it's too small or too narrow, which could likely be for me. I'm trying consciously very hard to not squeeze the gun or do that at all, but still having those problems. So who knows, maybe the sights are off, maybe it's me, maybe it's Maybelline. Huh? Anyone catch that reference? All right, max are loaded up. And our next load is the 110 grain Koenig jacketed hollow point. You might have noticed in the preview to What's for Dinner that I went with all defensive loads for this. Circle 4. Yeah, I'm aiming dead center, but hitting a bit left. No issues with that stuff. Now up to 115 grain is the Fort Scott Munitions Tumble Upon Impact. These are the solid copper little pyramid looking rounds. Spicy. Wow, thundering. Speaking of which, it's raining quite a bit, and let me clear off some stuff so things don't get too wet. Now on to circle 6 is some Blazer aluminum 115 grain regular full metal jacket stuff. We use aluminum and steel case ammunition in these tests because it's affordable ammo, so people tend to buy it. It's because it's cheaper materials. Aluminum and steel expand and contract at a different rate and have different friction both in the magazine and going into and out of the chamber of the barrel. So they do choke some guns. Not an issue for the Shield Plus. Then moving on to some steel, Wolf 115 grain. Steel cased ammunition, circle 7. Make sure I'm still on camera. Filming by myself is a little more complicated. Tia had some family things to take care of today. And it was the first non-rainy day that we'd had in like 2 weeks. So I had to come out and film, knock out what I could while the weather was decent. But as you guys may or may not be seeing, it's starting to rain. So I'm gonna have to hustle. Circle number 8 is the Federal Premium 124 grain Hydroshock. Oof, higher recoil. No issue cycling and grouped best so far. Now we move up to 138 grain with the Federal Syntech Defense synthetic jacketed hollow point. It's a blue round. Circle 9. Higher recoil again. Wow, yeah, jumpy. Not a fun round in this gun. And our last load is Federal Federal Premium Law Enforcement Tactical HST 147 grain. Circle 10. Also a little snappy. I had to catch myself flinching there, but the gun ran them all, which is great. Now let's take it over to the spinner for sights and trigger control. We are 14 yards away from our Titan Great Outdoors 6-inch spinner target. Use this target as a judgment of sights and trigger control learnability of a gun. That's because it's a small target, far away, and as you hit it, it starts moving. The better you hit it, the more you hit it, the faster it moves, the more important timing a well-placed shot becomes if you want it to flip over the top. It's not easy. And we've got a short barrel gun with 115 grain ammo. Don't know how much energy we're gonna have on that steel. We'll find out. I've given myself 8 rounds to try this out. And we'll see if my arrow left is still gonna curse me. Yep. I'm gonna have to aim off the right edge of the target. Got it up, but not quite over the top. That's probably more to do with lack of energy out of a 3-inch 9mm. Did the sights and trigger of the Shield Plus make that easier or more difficult? That's what I was looking at. Sights are nice and bright. They are a 3-dot sight system that was really easy to track and keep my eye on. I might consider blacking out the rear if I never envision using this in low light. However, the sights were good and crisp. I think they may be slightly off on this gun. I error left often because I have big hands, and when I have a small gun, I tend to squeeze. So it could be me, but I've been more left with this gun than normal. So size could be off a little bit. The trigger, yeah, it's still getting me. It's not the most predictable break. You come up to a wall easy enough. The wall is very identifiable, but it's just kind of mush, not mush, but it crunches through the wall. There's not a crisp break there. Does that matter for, oh, get off me, self-defense? No. Does it make it more difficult to time shots like that? Yes, for sure. And that's been hitting me throughout on this gun. I entered this review with that potential bias because I'd had that experience before on regular Shields and on other Shield Pluses. Wanted to give this one a fair shake, but it's still a trigger that to me is just not quite defined enough. But once again, for a micro compact, I don't think that necessarily matters too much. Are there other options? Yes. But before we get too much into wrapping things up on this, we've got to do accuracy. So back to 7 yards for a 1-inch square. See how I group with it. 5 shots from 7 yards. Target camera is recording this time. Just turned that on. Almost forgot. That's a 1-inch square. We use that because it tends to be scaled out to about the same width as a front sight post at 7 yards. So it makes for a really good aiming point when you're just trying to group. These will be my final shots to wrap up my thoughts. I'm using 5 rounds of the Sterling 115 grain ammo. We have a video on that. It's just a bulk ball ammo, but I've done pretty well with it in the past. Not bad for a little gun. Concluding thoughts on the Shield Plus. It's not a bad gun. There's nothing wrong with it. The texture definitely grabs your hand, but, and this is a later production one. Obviously these things have been out for quite some time, so we don't have the originals, but the texturing on this frame really holds your hand well, and that helps a lot when it comes to managing a small, potentially flippy gun, which 3-inch guns tend to be. It really stayed in there. Now I did use the extended magazine most of the time so that I could at least get 2.5 fingers on the gun, but I wear double XL gloves. If your hands are smaller than that, you probably won't have a problem getting a whole hand on the gun. The trigger is probably my biggest complaint, and I don't say that in a trigger snob way. There's nothing wrong with the weight. There's nothing wrong with the pull length. I think it's a fine defensive trigger aside from the unpredictability. It's just, I mean, if you're slapping the trigger to defend yourself, it probably doesn't matter. I was obviously still able to group with it decently. That's just a matter of holding the gun steady while I wait for it to figure out where it's going to go off this time. So you can deal with it, you can handle it. I just wish it was something a little more defined, especially with so much competition out there now for micro compacts. I think you can get possibly a trigger that fits your needs better. At least I can get a trigger that fits my needs better than the Shield Plus. We opted for the base model because it's something we bought. So we don't have the night sights, didn't have the red dot ready, any of that. Just y'all wanted to see the Shield Plus, so we got a Shield Plus. Thank you, patrons, for making that possible for us. It's yeah, not a bad gun. Tia, I really want her to shoot this because of her experience with her Shield. I don't think she's going to have any different opinion about this than she would her Shield, other than you've got the increased capacity. I'd really like to be able to get all 13 rounds in the 13 round magazine, but like I said, I gave it a try to the point where it's like, all right, now I'm forcing things. I don't like to force stuff with mechanical objects. That's usually when you end up with issues, but 11 was the most I could get in. Still 11 plus 1 beats 8 plus 1. So have some options there. I know that since this has been out for a long time, a lot of you probably have shot one or own one currently. I'd love to hear your feedback and your experience, why you chose it and how you feel about it having tried other guns. Yeah, it's a solid gun. I think I put it kind of middle of the road. I still feel uninspired by it, even after running it through our protocol, which we've done with hundreds of other guns. Usually, because we test things the same way over and over again through multiple different models, it really gives us a nice flat, controlled baseline by which to evaluate things. And it's not a gun that I wouldn't recommend. It's not a gun I'd recommend either. It's just like, if it's there, yeah, good, safe choice. Thanks for watching.